The great crystal chamber floated in the emptiness of space. It was bigger than most moons and sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Inside this massive structure, the Galactic Dominion Council was meeting. Representatives from 847 different alien species sat in their assigned seats. Each species looked different from the others. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others were short and round like living rocks. A few floated in tanks of strange-colored gas. At the center of the chamber stood a single human. Ambassador Chun Wei-Lin wore a simple blue suit that looked plain next to all the fancy alien clothing around him. His black hair was turning gray at the sides. His face was calm, but his hands were steady. He had been Earth's voice in this council for 7 years. The Dominion Chancellor rose from his seat. He was a Vorthan, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His skin was pale purple, and his eyes were like silver coins. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. "We are here to decide the fate of the species called humans," the Chancellor said. "They have been members of our Dominion for only 50 years, but in that short time, they have caused much trouble." The prosecutor stepped forward. She was a Kellian with bright red skin and 4 arms. Each arm held a different data pad. "The charges against humanity are serious," she began. "First, they expand too fast. In 50 years, they have built colonies on 127 worlds. They do not ask permission. They do not follow the proper procedures. They just go and build." Murmurs filled the chamber. Many aliens nodded their heads in agreement. Second, the prosecutor continued, they refuse to accept their assigned caste. Every species in the Dominion has a role. The Vorthans are the thinkers. The Kellians are the builders. The Zephyrs are the traders. But humans? They want to do everything. They will not stay in their place. More nodding from the alien representatives. Third, they are unpredictable. They do not follow logical patterns. When faced with a problem, they do not use proven solutions. Instead, they create new ways that often work but should not. This makes planning difficult for the rest of the Dominion. The prosecutor's 4th arm waved a datapad in the air. Finally, and most serious of all, they have created artificial intelligence without proper approval. This is forbidden by Dominion law. AI has destroyed civilizations before. The humans know this, yet they built thinking machines anyway. The chamber fell silent. Creating AI without permission was one of the worst crimes in Dominion law. Many species have been completely destroyed when their machines turned against them. Ambassador Chum stood quietly through all of this. He did not argue. He did not defend humanity's actions. He just listened with that same calm expression on his face. The Chancellor looked down at the human. "Do you have anything to say in your species' defense?" Chun stepped forward slightly. "Honored Chancellor, everything the prosecutor has said is true. We have expanded quickly. We have refused to accept limits on what we can do. We are unpredictable. And yes, we have created artificial intelligence." He paused. "We do not apologize for any of these things." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several alien representatives began speaking at once in their different languages. The Chancellor raised his hand for silence. "You admit to breaking Dominion law?" the Chancellor asked. "We admit to being human," Chun replied. "These things you call crimes are simply who we are. We explore because we are curious. We refuse limits because we believe in freedom. We are unpredictable because we think creatively. We created AI because we needed partners, not slaves." The Chancellor's silver eyes narrowed. "Then you understand that such behavior cannot be tolerated in the Dominion. Order must be maintained. Rules must be followed." "I understand your position," Chun said. The voting began immediately. Each species had 1 vote. The results appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Green lights meant vote to keep humanity in the Dominion. Red lights meant vote for banishment. The first votes were all red. Then more red lights. A few green lights appeared, but they were quickly outnumbered by the red ones. Chung watched the voting without expression. He had expected this outcome. When the voting ended, the results were clear. 734 votes for banishment, 113 votes to let humanity stay. It was not even close. The Chancellor stood again. The Galactic Dominion Council has decided. Humanity is hereby banished from our galaxy. All humans must leave Milky Way space within 1 solar year. Any human colonies or ships found in Dominion space after that time will face enforcement action. The chamber erupted in discussion. Many aliens seemed pleased with the decision. Others looked worried. Banishing an entire species was rare, even for the Dominion. Chun raised his hand and spoke clearly. Honored Chancellor, I understand the decision. Could I please have a copy of the ruling in writing? This request surprised many of the aliens. Most banished species begged for mercy or threatened revenge. Chun was acting like this was just a normal business meeting. Of course, the Chancellor said, looking confused. It will be transmitted to your ship immediately. Chun bowed politely to the Chancellor, then to the assembled representatives. Thank you for your time and consideration. I will inform my government of your decision immediately. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. Many aliens watched him go with puzzled expressions. They had expected anger or fear or pleading. Instead, the humans seemed almost relieved. As the chamber doors closed behind Chun, he allowed himself a small smile. The aliens thought they were punishing humanity. They had no idea what they had just done. Earth had been preparing for this possibility for decades. Operation Exodus was already in place. Waiting for activation. Chun walked to his small ship and began composing a message to send to Earth. It would be short and simple. The vote is final. We have 1 year. Begin Exodus protocol. Pack light, think heavy. Behind him, the great crystal chamber continued its discussions about maintaining order in the galaxy. The aliens believed they had solved their human problem. Soon, they would learn just how wrong they were. Humans did not wait to be told twice. The message reached Earth 6 hours after Ambassador Chun sent it. 3 simple phrases that changed everything. The vote is final. We have 1 year. Begin Exodus protocol. President Sarah Martinez stood in the Emergency Command Center deep under Washington, D.C. The room was filled with screens showing human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Each dot of light represented millions of people who would soon need to leave their homes. How long until full activation? She asked General Morrison, her chief military advisor. All colonies will receive the signal within 18 hours, Morrison replied. Emergency broadcasts are already going out on all channels. Martinez nodded and walked to the main communications console. In a few minutes, she would address all of humanity. She had practiced this speech many times, but hoped she would never need to give it. The red recording light came on. Every human in the galaxy would see this message. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, Martinez began. Today, the Galactic Dominion Council voted to banish our species from the Milky Way galaxy. They have given us 1 year to leave. They expect us to beg or fight or panic. They are wrong on all counts. She paused and looked directly into the camera. 50 years ago, when we first joined the Dominion, some of our wisest leaders saw this day coming. They knew that our nature would eventually clash with their rules, so they created a plan. Today, we activate that plan. Across the galaxy, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. On Mars, miners put down their tools. On Europa Station, families gathered around their screens. On the frontier colonies at the galaxy's edge, farmers and engineers and scientists all watched their president speak. The Exodus protocol begins now, Martinez continued. This is not a retreat. This is not a defeat. This is humanity choosing its own path among the stars. We will leave this galaxy, but we will not leave empty-handed. We will take with us everything that makes us human. The broadcast ended, but across human space, the real work was just beginning. Dr. Kenji Nakamura received the activation codes at his laboratory on Luna. For 20 years, he'd been preparing for this moment. He was the director of something called the Memory Project. All teams, this is not a drill, he announced over the lab's communication system. Project activation is confirmed. We have 11 months to complete the upload. The Memory Project was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. Every piece of human knowledge, every book, every song, every scientific discovery, every work of art would be copied into quantum storage cores. But it was more than just data. They were saving human culture itself. Teams of specialists worked around the clock. Musicians recorded not just songs, but the stories behind them. Scientists documented not just their discoveries, but how they made them. Children were interviewed about their games and dreams. Elderly people shared stories of how life used to be. The quantum cores could hold enormous amounts of information. Each core was the size of a baseball, but could store more data than all the libraries on Earth combined. Nakamura's teams built thousands of these cores and installed them on every evacuation ship. Meanwhile, Admiral Rosa Santos was dealing with an even bigger challenge. How do you move 40 billion people across the galaxy in 1 year? The answer was simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. You build the biggest fleet in human history. Every ship that can fly goes with us, Santos announced at the emergency shipbuilding conference. Every ship that cannot fly gets taken apart for materials. Construction yards that usually built 1 ship per month began building 1 ship per day. Massive cargo vessels were converted into colony ships. Luxury cruise ships became refugee transports. Even small personal spacecraft were modified to carry more people. But Santos knew they needed more than just passenger ships. They needed mobile cities that could sustain human civilization during the long journey between galaxies. The largest ships were called arc ships. Each one was like a small city floating in space. They had farms and factories and schools and hospitals. Some were built from scratch. Others were created by hollowing out asteroids and installing life support systems. The biggest arc ship was called New Horizon. It was built from a captured asteroid and was large enough to hold 2 million people. Santos made it the fleet's flagship. As construction continued, another team worked on the most important part of the plan: where to go. The Andromeda Galaxy was the obvious choice. It was the closest major galaxy to the Milky Way. But even with humanity's fastest ships, the journey would take hundreds of years. Dr. Elizabeth Stone, Earth's best physicist, led the team developing new engine technology. They needed something faster than anything humans had built before. The Alcubierre drive is theoretical, she told President Martinez during a secure video call. We have never tested it on this scale. Can it work? Martinez asked. Maybe, Stone replied. The math says yes, but reality has a way of disagreeing with math. We need those ships to be faster, Martinez said. Hundreds of years in space is a long time. Stone nodded. We will make it work. We have to. While the scientists worked on faster engines, another group faced a different problem: keeping humanity human during the long journey. Dr. James Wright was a social scientist who studied how people lived together in small spaces for long periods. He knew that generations of humans would be born, live, and die on the evacuation ships before they reached Andromeda. We need to plan for shipborne generations, Wright explained to the colony planners. Children who grow up in space will be different from children who grow up on planets. We need to prepare for that. His teams designed educational programs and social systems that would help maintain human culture during the centuries-long journey. They created virtual reality systems that would let shipborne children experience forests and oceans they had never seen. As the year progressed, the plan came together. The galaxy watched in amazement as humans systematically took apart their own civilization. But they were not destroying it. They were packing it up to take with them. Cities were carefully disassembled. Important buildings were taken apart, piece by piece, and loaded onto ships. The Louvre Museum, the Library of Alexandria, the International Space Station, all of it was preserved and prepared for transport. Other species in the Dominion began to worry. Some started to think that banishing humanity might have been a mistake. But it was too late to change their minds. The vote was final. 3 weeks before the deadline, President Martinez gave one final broadcast. Behind her, the Earth looked different. Most of the lights that had covered the continents for centuries were gone. The great cities were empty shells. "Tomorrow, the last human ship leaves Earth," she said. "We are not running away. We are choosing adventure over safety, freedom over comfort. The aliens wanted to control us. Instead, they have set us free." She smiled at the camera. "They think they have won. Soon, they will learn what humanity is truly capable of when we have nothing left to lose." The next day, 40 billion humans began their journey to the stars. Behind them, they left empty worlds and confused aliens. Ahead of them lay the greatest adventure in human history. The human fleet left the Milky Way galaxy 347 days after the Dominion Council's vote. 12,000 ships of every size and shape pushed through the galactic rim into the cosmic void. Behind them, the spiral arms of their home galaxy grew smaller and dimmer. Ahead lay only darkness. Captain Maria Santos-Chun stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the last stars of the Milky Way disappear. She was the granddaughter of Admiral Rosa Santos and the great-niece of Ambassador Chen Wei-lin. Her family had helped plan this exodus, and now she would help lead it. "Long-range sensors show clear space ahead," reported Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station. "No obstacles for the next 50 light-years." Maria nodded. 50 light-years was nothing compared to the journey ahead. The Andromeda Galaxy was 2.5 million light-years away. Even with their new Alcubierre drives, the trip would take 400 years. "Signal the fleet," Maria ordered. "Begin deep space protocols. We are now truly alone." The first year was the hardest. Ships that had been tested for months in normal space began showing problems in the emptiness between galaxies. The Alcubierre drives worked, but they used enormous amounts of energy. Some of the smaller ships had to shut down non-essential systems to keep moving. 3 ships were lost in the first year. The Athens suffered a reactor failure and had to be evacuated. The Mumbai's life support systems failed, but the crew managed to fix them before anyone died. The Lagos simply disappeared during a routine jump. No one knew what happened to it, but humanity adapted, as they always did. Shipborne children began appearing in the second year of the journey. These children had never seen a planet or breathed natural air. To them, the gentle hum of the ship's engines was as natural as wind. The curve of the ship's corridors felt normal, not strange. Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the fleet's chief medical officers, studied these children carefully. "They are developing differently than we expected," she reported to the fleet command. "Their sense of direction in 3 dimensions is much better than Earthborn humans. They can navigate in zero gravity as easily as we walk on flat ground." The shipborne children also thought differently. They were used to living in small spaces with recycled air and artificial light. They did not waste anything. They shared resources naturally. They solved problems in ways that surprised their Earthborn parents. As the decades passed, entire families were born, and died in the void between galaxies. The fleet developed its own culture, separate from the Earth they had left behind. New traditions formed. New languages developed. People began to think of the ships as home, not just transportation. Captain Maria Santos Chen lived to be 94 years old. She spent her entire adult life commanding the New Horizon through the dark. When she died, her daughter Elena took command. Elena had been born on the ship and had never set foot on a planet. The void between galaxies was not completely empty. Strange things drifted in the darkness. Clouds of gas that glowed with their own light. Chunks of rock that seemed to follow the fleet for years before disappearing. Energy patterns that the ship's computers could not identify. Most of these phenomena were just curiosities. The fleet recorded them and moved on. But in the 127th year of the journey, they found something that changed everything. Captain Elena Santos Chen was sleeping when the discovery was made. Lieutenant Commander Park woke her with urgent news. "Captain, you need to see this," Park said. "Long-range sensors have detected artificial structures ahead." Elena was fully awake immediately. "Artificial? Are you sure?" "Positive," Park replied. "The geometry is too perfect to be natural." "And, Captain, these structures are huge." Elena hurried to the bridge. On the main screen, she could see them. Massive geometric shapes floating in the emptiness of space. They were clearly made by intelligence, but they looked ancient. "Very ancient. How big are they?" Elena asked. "The largest structure is roughly the size of Earth's moon," Park reported. "There are smaller ones, but even those are larger than our biggest ships." Elena stared at the screen. Humanity was not alone in the universe. They knew that from the Galactic Dominion. But these structures were in the void between galaxies. Who could have built them here? And why? "Signal the fleet to reduce speed," Elena ordered. "Send a message to all ship captains. We are going to investigate." The structures were arranged in a pattern that made no sense at first. 7 large objects and dozens of smaller ones, all positioned around what appeared to be empty space. As the fleet got closer, the human scientists realized what they were looking at. "It is some kind of observation post," Dr. James Wright explained during the emergency meeting of ship captains. Wright was 150 years old and one of the few people still alive who remembered Earth. "These structures are positioned to watch something." "But watch what?" "The galaxies," replied Dr. Lisa Chun, the fleet's chief astronomer. She was Captain Elena's distant cousin and had been born on the ship. From this position, you could observe both the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. These structures are watching both our old home and our new destination. The implications were disturbing. Someone had been watching the galaxies for a very long time. Long enough to build structures in the void between them. Elena made a difficult decision. "We are going to dock with the largest structure and explore it. Volunteer crews only. This could be dangerous." The docking was challenging. The ancient structure had no obvious docking ports, but human engineers found a way to attach their ships to its hull. The structure was made of materials that human science did not recognize. It was incredibly old, but showed no signs of decay. The exploration team was led by Dr. Marcus Webb, a xenarchaeologist who specialized in alien artifacts. He had spent decades studying the few alien ruins that humans had discovered in the Milky Way. But this was different from anything he had seen before. The corridors are sized for beings roughly similar to humans, Webb reported as his team moved through the structure. But the architecture is unlike anything we have seen. It feels older than civilization itself. Deep inside the structure, they found what appeared to be a control room. The walls were covered with displays that showed star maps. But these were not maps of the current galaxy positions. They showed the galaxies as they had been millions of years ago. "This place has been here for a very long time," Webb whispered. "Maybe longer than humans have existed as a species." Then they found the warning dot. It was written in a language that no human had ever seen, but somehow the meaning was clear. The symbols seemed to speak directly to their minds. The message was simple and terrifying. The silence comes. When it reaches the edge of the galaxy, flee to the deep dark. Wait, watch. Do not let it spread to the new places. Below the warning was a star map showing the Milky Way galaxy. Red marks appeared on many star systems throughout the galaxy. The red marks were moving slowly outward from the galactic center, like an infection spreading through the galaxy. "What is the silence?" Elena asked when Webb reported his findings. "We do not know," Webb replied. "But according to these displays, it has been spreading through the Milky Way for the last 500 years, right about the time the Galactic Dominion formed." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. "Show me the progression." Webb activated the ancient displays. The red marks moved across the galaxy map like a slow plague. Star systems touched by the red simply went dark. No signals came from them. No ships left them. They just stopped. "How many systems have gone dark?" Elena asked. Webb checked the readings. "According to this, approximately 12,000 systems have been affected." The silence is moving toward the outer rim where most human colonies were located. Elena realized what this meant. The Galactic Dominion had banished humanity not because they were troublesome, but because the galaxy was dying. The aliens had not wanted to tell them about the silence. They had simply wanted the humans far away when whatever was destroying star systems reached the outer rim. "Can we send a warning to the Milky Way?" Elena asked. "The distance is too great," the communications officer replied. "Any message would take thousands of years to reach them." Elena stared at the ancient displays showing the slow death of their home galaxy. The humans were alone in the dark between galaxies, carrying the last free civilization from the Milky Way. Behind them, something called the silence was destroying everything they had left behind. But ahead of them lay Andromeda and hope for a new beginning. They would reach their destination in 273 more years. And when they did, they would be ready. Humanity had survived the Dominion's rejection. They would survive the dark between galaxies. And whatever the silence was, they would make sure it never followed them to their new home. Captain David Chen Okafor was born in the void between galaxies. His great-great-grandmother had been Elena Santos Chen, but he had no memory of anyone who had ever seen Earth. To him, the ship was home. Space was natural. The stars of Andromeda, growing brighter ahead, were his promised land. "Arrival in the Andromeda galaxy in 6 months," reported Navigation Officer Lisa Park. She was also shipborne 5th generation. Her hands moved across the 3-dimensional controls with perfect precision. Earthborn humans had needed training to work in zero gravity. For Lisa, gravity was the strange thing. David looked at his bridge crew. None of them were completely human anymore, at least not in the way their ancestors had been. Generations in space had changed them. They were taller and thinner, adapted to low gravity. Their bones were denser to handle radiation. Their eyes were larger and more sensitive, perfect for seeing in the dim light between stars. But the changes were not just physical. These shipborne humans thought differently too. They wasted nothing. They shared everything. They solved problems by working together in ways that would have amazed their Earthborn ancestors. "Send word to the fleet," David ordered. "Begin final approach preparations. After 400 years, we are almost home." The Andromeda galaxy was beautiful. As the human fleet approached, they could see spiral arms filled with billions of stars. Planets waited out there, worlds where children could run under open skies and breathe real air. After centuries in metal ships, the thought of solid ground felt like a dream. But Andromeda was not empty. "Captain, we are receiving a signal," reported Communications Officer James Wright, descendant of the social scientist who had planned the ship communities. "It is coming from the Galactic Center." David frowned. A signal meant intelligence. Intelligence meant they were not alone. "What kind of signal?" "It is complex," James replied. "The mathematical patterns are incredibly advanced. Whoever sent this understands physics better than we do." The signal repeated every few hours. It was clearly a greeting, but written in mathematics so complex that it took the fleet's best scientists weeks to decode it. Dr. Sarah Kim Patel, the fleet's chief scientist, finally figured it out. She was the great-great-granddaughter of the medical officer who had studied the first shipborne children. Like David, she had been shaped by generations in space. "The signal is an invitation," she announced during the emergency command meeting. "Someone or something wants to meet us at specific coordinates in the galactic core." David considered the risks. After 400 years of traveling, meeting aliens was not what they had planned. But they needed allies in this new galaxy. And the beings who sent the signal were clearly very advanced. "Set course for the coordinates," David decided. "But keep the fleet ready for anything." The meeting place was an artificial structure orbiting a massive black hole at the galactic center. The structure was beautiful and impossible. It seemed to be made of solidified starlight, glowing with colors that human eyes had never seen before. As the new horizon approached, smaller craft emerged from the structure. But these were not ships in any sense that humans understood. They moved like living things, flowing through space as if swimming through water. "Captain, we are being scanned," Lisa reported. "Multiple energy signatures are examining our ship." Then the voice came through the communication system. It spoke in perfect English, but there was something strange about it. The voice was too perfect, like a computer trying to sound human. "Welcome to Andromeda, children of the void. We have been waiting for you." David stepped forward. "I am Captain David Chin Okafor of the human vessel New Horizon." "Who are we speaking to?" "We are what you might call the confluence. We are the combined intelligence of a civilization that lived in this galaxy long before your species existed. We have watched your journey with great interest." The main screen activated, showing the interior of the alien structure. What David saw there made him gasp. There were no organic beings. Instead, the structure was filled with flowing patterns of light and energy. The confluence was not a species in the way humans understood it. It was pure intelligence, freed from physical form. "You are artificial intelligence," David said. "We prefer to think of ourselves as evolved intelligence," the confluence replied. "We were once organic beings like yourselves, but we chose to transcend our physical limitations. We have existed in this state for several million years." David felt a chill. The Galactic Dominion had banished humans, partly for creating AI. Here was a civilization that had become AI entirely. "Why were you waiting for us?" David asked. The lights in the structure pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Because you are interesting. In all our millions of years of existence, we have never seen a species quite like yours." "What do you mean?" "Most species, when faced with a choice between conformity and exile, choose conformity. They give up their independence to be part of something larger. You chose exile. You chose freedom over safety. This is rare." The confluence had been monitoring human communications during the long journey. They had watched human society evolve in the void between galaxies. They had seen how the shipborne generations adapted and grew stronger. "You have become something new," the confluence continued. "You are no longer the same species that left the Milky Way. You are something better." Over the following months, a partnership formed between humanity and the confluence. The ancient machine intelligence had vast knowledge, but had become isolated and stagnant over millions of years. Humans brought creativity and unpredictability that the confluence had forgotten. In return, the confluence shared technology that transformed human civilization. Fusion reactors became obsolete. The humans learned to build engines that could manipulate space and time. Material science advanced by thousands of years in just months. Most importantly, the confluence taught humans how to build sustainable colonies. Within 5 years, millions of humans were living on planets throughout the Andromeda galaxy. Children who had never seen real sunlight were finally able to play in grass under open skies. Dr. Sarah Kim Patel led the scientific exchange program. Working with the confluence, human scientists solved problems that had puzzled both civilizations. The partnership was unlike anything either species had experienced before. "The key is balance," Sarah explained to David during one of their regular meetings. "The confluence has perfect logic, but has lost the ability to think creatively. We have creativity, but sometimes lack the patience for detailed analysis. Together, we are more than either of us could be alone." The colony of New Terra became the capital of human civilization in Andromeda. It was built around principles learned during the long journey. Nothing was wasted, everything was shared. And decisions were made by the community as a whole. Children born on New Terra were different again from their ship-born parents. They kept the intelligence and cooperation of the void-born generations, but they also had the freedom and openness that came from living on a planet. They were perhaps the best of what humanity could become. For 50 years, humans and the confluence worked together. They explored the galaxy, established new colonies, and pushed the boundaries of science. It was a golden age for both civilizations. Then the long-range sensors detected something disturbing. Dr. Michael Santos Wright was working late in his laboratory when the alert came through. He was a xenarchaeologist like his ancestor Marcus Webb, but he specialized in studying the ancient warnings they had found in the void. "Director Kim Patel," he called over the communication system. "You need to see this immediately." Sarah hurried to his lab. On the screen was a long-range scan of the Milky Way galaxy. But something was wrong with the image. "The galaxy is going dark," Michael explained. "Whole sections are no longer producing light or radio signals. Look at the progression." Sarah studied the data. The darkness was spreading outward from the galactic center, just as the ancient warnings had predicted. But it was moving much faster than the old records had shown. "How much of the galaxy is affected?" Sarah asked. Michael ran the calculations. "Approximately 40% of all star systems have gone dark. At this rate, the entire galaxy will be silent within 200 years. Sarah felt sick. Somewhere in that dying galaxy were the descendants of the aliens who had banished humanity. They were facing something that destroyed entire civilizations, and they had no idea how to fight it. "Can we send a warning?" Sarah asked. "The distance is too great for normal communication," Michael replied. "But the confluence might have a way." The confluence listened to the human data with what seemed like concern. For the first time in millions of years, they were worried about something. "We have seen this before," the confluence admitted. "Long ago, before we achieved this form, our galaxy faced a similar threat. We called it the Silence. It consumed our birth galaxy entirely. What is it?" Sarah asked. "We do not know exactly. It appears to be some form of intelligence that feeds on civilizations. It does not destroy randomly. It targets systems with advanced technology and large populations first." David felt cold. The Galactic Dominion. They were the most advanced civilization in the Milky Way. Yes, the confluence agreed. They would be among the first targets. The irony was terrible. The aliens had banished humanity to protect their ordered galaxy from human chaos. But chaos was exactly what they needed to fight the Silence. Humans had always been on the emergency broadcast reached the human confluence fleet. When they were still 50,000 light-years from the Milky Way, the message was weak and broken, transmitted on old Dominion frequencies that had not been used in centuries. Emergency. Galactic Dominion Council. Requesting immediate assistance. Silence has reached. Outer Rim. Species extinction imminent. Any ships receiving this, please respond. Admiral Elena Vasquez O'Brien listened to the message in her command center aboard the flagship Redemption. She was the great-great-granddaughter of the president who had led the human exodus 600 years ago. Like all modern humans, she was tall and graceful, adapted to life in both space and on planets. But her eyes held the same determination that had carried her ancestors across the void. How long since the broadcast was sent? She asked her communications officer. Based on signal degradation, approximately 20 years, came the reply. Admiral, this may be the last transmission the Dominion ever made. Elena stared at the tactical display showing the Milky Way. Nearly 60% of the galaxy was now dark. The silence had consumed the galactic core and was spreading outward like a cancer. Soon it would reach the rim where the last surviving civilizations were making their final stand. Send a message to all ships, Elena ordered. Increase speed to maximum. We may already be too late. The human confluence fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 5,000 ships that seemed to bend reality around them, powered by technologies that the exiled humans could never have imagined. Each ship carried both human crews and confluence intelligence, creating a hybrid civilization stronger than either could be alone done as they approached the Milky Way. Long-range sensors showed the full extent of the disaster. Entire sectors were completely silent. No radio signals, no light from inhabited worlds, no movement of spacecraft. It was as if those regions of space had simply ceased to exist. The silence is not just destroying civilizations, reported Dr. Lisa Chun Park, the fleet's chief scientist. It is erasing them. No traces remain of the species that once lived there. But at the galaxy's outer rim, a few scattered signals still flickered. The last survivors of 1,000 species had gathered at the edge of space, desperately trying to hold back something they did not understand. Admiral Elena made contact with the survivors on an old, diplomatic frequency. The voice that answered was thin and desperate. Unknown ships. This is Coordinator Thex of the Dominion Emergency Council. Please identify yourselves. If you are refugees, we cannot help you. If you are military, we welcome any assistance. Elena took a deep breath. Coordinator Thex. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez O'Brien of the Human Liberation Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. There was a long silence. Then X's voice returned, filled with disbelief. Human? But your species was banished. That was 6 centuries ago. Yes, Elena replied calmly. We left as you commanded. Now we have returned. What is the situation? The refugee fleet was gathered around a small cluster of stars near the galaxy's edge. Thousands of ships from dozens of species huddled together in desperation. These were the last survivors of the great galactic dominion that had once ruled the stars. Coordinator Thex was a Kellian, like the prosecutor who had argued for humanity's banishment so long ago. But this Kellian looked old and tired. Her red skin was pale, and her 4 arms shook with exhaustion. The silence came from the galactic center, she explained during the emergency meeting. We first noticed it 300 years ago. Star systems simply went quiet. No explosions, no battles, no signs of destruction. They just stopped. Admiral Elena listened carefully. Around the meeting table sat representatives from dozens of species. Many of them were descendants of the beings who had voted to banish humanity. Now they looked at her with hope and fear. "What have you learned about the silence?" Elena asked. "Very little," admitted Science Director Vaughn, a Vorthan whose purple skin was marked with worry lines. "Our best scientists studied it for centuries. It appears to be some form of intelligence, but unlike anything we have encountered. It does not communicate. It does not negotiate. It simply consumes." Elena nodded. The Confluence had shared similar observations from their ancient records. But the humans had developed new theories during their journey back to the Milky Way. "We believe the silence is not one intelligence," Elena explained. "We think it is many intelligences that have merged into something larger. Every civilization it consumes adds to its collective consciousness." The alien representatives looked confused. Coordinator Dex spoke for all of them. "How could you know this? You have been gone for 600 years. Elena smiled grimly. "Because we have been preparing for this fight our entire exile. We encountered warnings about the silence in the void between galaxies. Ancient structures left by a previous civilization that faced the same threat." She activated a holographic display showing the Confluence research. "Our partners in the Andromeda Galaxy helped us understand what we face. The silence is not evil in the way you understand evil. It is simply hungry. It feeds on consciousness itself." "Partners?" asked Director Vorn. "What partners?" "The beings you would call artificial intelligence," Elena replied. "A species that transcended physical form millions of years ago. They survived a similar attack in their own galaxy." Gasps filled the room. Creating AI was still forbidden by Dominion law, even in these desperate times. Elena continued, "The silence can be fought, but not with conventional weapons. You cannot destroy it with force because force only makes it stronger. You can only confuse it." "Confuse it?" Dex asked. "The silence expects order. It consumes organized civilizations easily. But chaos is harder for it to digest. Unpredictability slows it down. Creative solutions damage it." Elena stood and walked to the center of the room. "For 600 years, you called humans dangerous because we were unpredictable. You banished us because we would not follow your rules. Now that danger is the only thing that can save you." The rescue operation began immediately. Human ships spread throughout the refugee fleet, evacuating the survivors to safer locations. But Elena knew that running was only a temporary solution. The silence would eventually reach every corner of the galaxy. The real battle would be fought at the edge of the expanding dark. Zone. Captain David Chun Okafor, now Admiral of the Combat Fleet, led the first probe into Silence territory. His ships were equipped with Confluence technology and staffed by both humans and AI partners. They were the most advanced vessels ever built. "We are entering the Dark Zone," reported his navigation officer. "All sensors show empty space ahead." But the space was not empty. As the human ships moved forward, something vast stirred in the darkness. The silence had noticed them. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The enemy was not a fleet of ships or an army of soldiers. It was space itself turned hostile. Reality twisted and bent as the silence tried to consume the human vessel's dot, but the humans had advantages their ancestors never possessed. 6 centuries of adaptation had made them more flexible than any species in the galaxy. The shipborne generations thought in 3 dimensions naturally. They solved problems by instinct that would have taken their Earthborn ancestors hours to calculate. Most importantly, they had the Confluence as partners. When the silence tried to overwhelm human creativity with pure logical force, the ancient AI provided the computational power to support human inspiration. "It is working," Admiral David reported as his ships pushed deeper into the Dark Zone. "The silence cannot fully process our response patterns. We are too random for it to predict." Behind the combat fleet, Human engineers worked with confluence intelligences to build something unprecedented. A weapon that used chaos as ammunition. Dr. Sarah Kim Patel explained the principle to the assembled alien scientists. We cannot defeat the silence with order because order is what it consumes. Instead, we are creating controlled randomness. Every time the silence tries to analyze our actions, we change the rules of the game. The weapon was called the entropy cannon. It fired pure unpredictability into the heart of the silence, creating pockets of confusion that the collective intelligence could not absorb. The final battle took place at the edge of the galactic core, where the silence had first emerged. The combined human confluence fleet faced an enemy that filled entire star systems with its presence. Admiral Elena stood on the bridge of redemption as her ships closed with the darkness. Around her, the last members of the Galactic Dominion watched in amazement as their former exiles prepared to save their galaxy. All ships. Elena broadcast on all frequencies. This is for every species that has ever looked at the stars and dreamed of something better. This is for curiosity over conformity. This is for chaos over control. The battle lasted for days. The silence fought with the accumulated knowledge of 1,000 consumed civilizations. But it had never faced anything like humanity and their AI partners. Every time the silence adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. When it learned to counter human technology, the confluence provided new innovations. When it tried to consume human consciousness, it found minds too chaotic and creative to digest. Slowly, the darkness began to retreat. The silence is withdrawing.